Hey guys and girls, Bored Now, back with Rachel McDonald. And on this video, we're going to be starting a new franchise, and it's the Wrong Turn franchise as voted by you. So this is going to be the first one, the original film from 2003. And you can tell it's a 2003 film because it stars Eliza Dusku in the lead role, because this was very much her sort of peak sort of period. Also, a couple of other of the cast, I think, are very sort of 2003 sort of actors, and it sort of has an early 2000s look and feel to the film as well. But yeah, we've got 7 Wrong Turn movies to be doing. Yeah, more than you would think for this franchise. But
Yes.
we'll obviously spread them out. We'll do other stuff in between as well. But a lot of these, yeah, I haven't seen. I think I've only seen 2 of the Wrong Turn movies, including this one. Had you seen any before, or?
No, I haven't seen any of these movies. I, until recently, didn't even know what these movies were about. I just knew that Wrong Turn was a movie from 2003 starring Eliza Dushku. I was very surprised to find out that it was a whole franchise. So this will be an interesting experience. I'm going in almost completely blind to this franchise. So everything you hear is going to be my absolute first impression of the whole thing. So yeah, hadn't seen them at all.
Strange franchise because it's such a tenuous sort of like premise and gimmick, and I sort of get the impression, because I've only seen this one and I've seen I think it's number 4 I've seen before, but it seems like, because obviously in this one it's literally just like one of the lead characters takes a wrong turn on the road. He's he's on his way to like an interview or something, takes a wrong turn, he bumps into these other characters, and there's actually a little swerve there where at first it makes it look like they might be the threat sort of thing, that they might be up to no good, and you get familiar sort of horror type things going on. You get the sort of the trope of an old man at a gas station warning him not, don't go down there, don't go that way. It's into these other characters, a group of friends. Elijah Discu's character is one of them. You've also got Jeremy Sisko, probably the other sort of famous name in this movie, and slowly, there is a threat from these mysterious type creatures. I guess we can talk about what they are later in the review, but it's sort of, for quite a lot of the film, they sort of slowly build up to them where you're not actually sure what sort of creatures they are. And there's an opening like setup scene where a couple like rock climbing are like, attacked by them and killed off, but you don't actually see them in that opening. So it's one of those horrors where until about, I guess, halfway through, you don't actually know what the monsters are. In turn, sort of premise is kind of even more loose, it seems like. Because like the other one I saw it was just set in a ski lodge, and so I'm not sure if I ever saw the start of the film, so I don't know if that has really much to do with like something being a wrong turn, them taking a wrong turn. Because it seems such a small thing. You can only really do it so many times, I think. But
I'm very curious to see where the franchise goes, because as we discussed this, like I was watching this movie and I was like, how is this premise going to turn into a whole franchise without it just feeling like a rinse and repeat with every movie? So yeah, I'm very curious to see what they ended up doing with this franchise, because it does really seem like it should just be a standalone film. It doesn't seem to be one of those films that kind of warrants a franchise, like certain franchises, there's a lot you can do with the premise, but this one's just kind of like, the premise is so basic, and when we get into exactly what it is, it's like there's really not much you can do with it. So yeah, a little curious and apprehensive moving forward with this one. We'll see where it ends up going.
We will. So you hadn't seen this before?
No.
Okay. And Desmond Harrington is the other sort of lead. I think him and Elijah Discu are sort of billed as like the top 2, and they're sort of like the lead characters. And then, as I said, you have this other group. You have Jeremy Sisto, and he's got like are planning on getting married and settling down, and they he in particular has a sort of a hippie sort of vibe, and there's a couple of other characters, and then you get the main threat, and sort of, I guess this sort of fits into the survival type horror, that sort of category in some ways. Obviously, out in the wilds, out in the woods, and so anyway, so this is the original Wrong Turn. What did you think of it?
I didn't hate it. I didn't think it was terrible. I've definitely seen worse horror movies, but it was also not spectacular. It felt very 2000s. I will say that. Like, it definitely had that 2000s vibe. It felt very much like the kind of the slasher movies that were coming out around that time. So from that alone, I found it enjoyable, because I do have a bit of nostalgia for the early 2000s, and the mid 90s to early 2000s is my favorite period of horror. So I didn't mind that. I did think that, so the premise itself I thought was kind of interesting, not really up my alley. Like, once we get to talking about like what the bad guys really are, their kind of caricatures and the way that they're presented, not really my thing, and their methods of killing. But and I have to say, I did find the characters in this movie really thin. Like, none of them were really well developed at all. I think the main character got the most development, and even he was kind of a bit like a block of wood. I think Jeremy Sisto's character was probably the most enjoyable. Like you said, he's kind of a bit of a hippie type. He's very laid back. He was quite entertaining. I think that the movie was, I think it's the kind of, like, it was entertaining, but it's not like what you'd call highbrow cinema, you know, nothing particularly groundbreaking or innovative about it. It's just kind of one of those little backward slashes that you can throw on a Sunday afternoon. And when we start to discuss spoilers, I'll talk about a few scenes that I did find quite intense, but I did also find it very predictable. Like I said, the characters are very thin. I feel like they're kind of caricatures. They're kind of the stock horror movie villains that you're used to from like late 80s slashers. And it was very easy to predict exactly who would die and when. You know, it was very easy to predict the order of the victims and who was going to die and who was going to be left standing at the end. And it got a little damsel in distressy towards the end, which I didn't really like that much. You know, one of the reasons I like slasher films so much and the horror genre in general is because you usually have these really kick-ass female characters. You know, you've got your final girls that are always really cool, but this movie got a little bit into the damsel in distress territory, which I did not find that impressive. So overall, I thought it was fairly enjoyable, but nothing spectacular or groundbreaking or, you know, fantastic. You know, you wouldn't go around saying it's a terrible film, but you also wouldn't go around saying it's, you know, a really great film. What about you?
On the same page, pretty much. I think it's solid, and as a horror fan, I think it's the sort that you do rewatch just because it's an easy watch. And
yeah,
I think I agree the characters aren't great. They're probably a mixed bag. I think Sisto is the best of them. I agree, because he's I think he brings charisma and charm to what otherwise could have been a bit of an annoying character. And also I did buy into them as a couple, their relationship. I bought into them actually caring about each other, and it actually would have been maybe a bit more of an interesting movie if I don't know, they just mixed up who survived or who's like stayed to the end. Like if they'd had like Sisto survive or something, or at least be one of the last ones to like go. But there is actually a good scene with him when he sacrifices himself. I did like that scene as like a character type scene. But he's the standout, and I like that relationship. A Desmond Harrison fan, I think he's a terrible actor.
He wasn't great, was he? Yeah, I didn't find him great.
It's just that stereotypical, you know, sort of, good guy type, you know, athletic sort type thing. And he kept doing dumb things as well, which I think made him worse. I think quite late on in the film, his idea to go up the treehouse, I thought was really dumb. I mean, that had disaster written all over it.
Yeah, definitely.
Eliza Dusku, always watchable, and I guess she is playing the sort of Faith style role a little bit. Obviously, not as much of as a bad girl in this, but it's sort of similar because she gets to be like quite action orientated and
Yeah.
quite sort of feisty, and does become a leader, so she's fine. I mean, again, I sort of agree that the characters aren't really fleshed out that much, but I quite enjoy it. I think it's solid. I think the horror moments are quite good generally. There's one or two good kills. I also thought the special effects makeup were pretty good on the
Yes,
creatures.
I
I
do
thought
agree with that.
that was well done.
Mm.
So solid is the word, but I definitely agree that then it's not too remarkable. Carly, I mean, she does actually grow over the course of the film. Like she does get a little bit tougher. So I did like that.
Yeah, my more annoyance was the climax of the film, which we'll get to, where they kind of diminish Eliza's character a little bit. But it's funny when you're saying about Eliza, like being a bit of a Faith character. I wrote in my notes, I was like, I like Eliza, but almost every character of hers is kind of
Mm,
played in varying shades of Faith. You know, like I don't know,
yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen a character of hers that doesn't have a little bit of Faith in it. So, and I found that her character here again had that kind of like shades of Faith throughout it. Like, I like Eliza. I think Faith was a great role for her, but when you see her other roles, you do see that she doesn't have the greatest of range. So all of her characters do have a bit of a similarity to them, which is fine. You know, a lot of actors do find their little niches, and she gets to do, like you said, she gets to be a bit athletic in this, and she gets to show off that she is a bit more of a physical actor as well. So yeah, but I think the performances in general were pretty underwhelming, except for Sisto. The lead guy was just terrible. And it's funny because Eliza has chemistry with almost everyone she even stands next to, and she had no chemistry with this guy. And they obviously weren't trying to build like a romance, but given that they became like the two remaining characters, you were obviously supposed to feel that they were being bonded by the trauma. And I didn't really get that much. It might have been down to him because
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of the double problem of they didn't have chemistry, and the other side is they didn't. Whereas you actually quite cared about the other relationship.
Yes.
They didn't really build. There was just no reason for them to bond. I didn't give them a reason to, come together and bond.
Yeah, it wasn't really believable by the end of the movie that they would be like this bonded couple. I will say though, the direction of the movie was a little bit off times. Like at the beginning, there was this weird low angle they kept using as the guy was driving, and I was like, what are we doing here? Are we trying to be arty? But there were some scenes that I did find quite effective, like quite scary. When they're in the house and they're searching around them, and all of a sudden the truck pulls up to the house, and they're hiding under the bed while they drag the body of their friend in. I found that scene, very tense, and I found that very tense filled. And I thought that when they escape and they're running through the woods and they come across the graveyard of cars, and the horror just kind of sets in of like how many people have died out here at the hands of these people that live out here. I thought that was a very effective scene, but I did also feel that sometimes the movie was maybe trying a little too hard. Like I felt like they were almost going for like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre type feel. We're in the backwoods of America and there are rednecks and everything, but because the film felt so 2000s, it didn't quite nail that. And I remember thinking when they went into the house, like a lot of the stuff looked very kind of cliched and deliberately put there, like ooh, spooky music box, and ooh, creepy fridge filled with human body parts, and ooh, chains on the wall. It was like, okay, this feels like it's a room that's been staged rather than, when you think about like the house in Texas Chainsaw, when they go into that house and there's the animal carcasses and the house is like stinking and rotted, it feels genuine, like genuine crazy people live here, whereas this house, or I don't know, for me felt very staged, like we just have to put the right amount of creepy stuff in this house to make sure that that it's the bad guy's house. So at least for me that came across as a little bit contrived.
Things stand out as like early 2000s for sure. Like the soundtrack definitely was generic sort of rock, and also like the opening credits, because the style of the lettering, that is so early 2000s. Like I think they used that sort of titles in a lot of like thrillers from the time, just like the sort of like, I don't know, like floating type letters when they like fade in and out. And
yeah, definitely.
it's one of those weird things, even though we're not talking about something which is that long ago now. It just, for whatever reason, that style now feels very dated. Whereas you might see a film from like a decade or two before that, and the style wouldn't feel dated. So
I get what you mean. There is that certain little era of 2000s where it's if you see like certain credits, you can instantly tell it was made in this particular era, and it's not even specific to the horror genre. I think quite a few of those movies had that kind of very 2000s feel. So I definitely get what you're saying there. But I mean, I don't mind that because I have a lot of nostalgia for that time period. That was kind of my early to mid teens, so formative years are very, very much like that times. But what of the film, like what parts of the film really worked for you? Like what did you find like it was elevated the film a bit?
Creatures were quite effective. I did, as I said, the special effects, makeup. So I think once you got into the survival stuff, it was pretty decent. I agree, it was pretty predictable overall, but they did come up with some quite tense situations. And
definitely.
You had, and I think you had some fun moments. You had some fun, like, little references along the way. Like there was a Deliverance reference or something, which was pretty good. That was a funny little reference. The Evan character was pretty terrible as well.
Was he the stoner at the beginning with his girlfriend? They were the first ones to die?
Oh no, not at the very beginning. I mean the ones who were with the group, and they were the first two to die from the group.
Yes, I know who you're talking about. Yeah, they were pretty thin characters.
Tom Cruise wannabe with his roll-on Bono style glasses.
That's a good description.
Yeah.
I will say though, that first on-screen kill that we see of the girl, that was a pretty impressive kill where they decapitate her across the mouth with the barbed wire. I got pretty like, whoa, I had a moment when that happened. And again, like you said, special effects are really good. Now if we just talk for a minute about the creatures in it. So my impression was that they were supposed to be human, but they were like that kind of horrible stereotype that was around back then of like deformed, inbred kind of evil characters, which we really need to do away with. It's not PC at all. But then towards the end of the film, when they're having their showdown, I was like, okay, are these dudes like invincible now? Because they're like hacking away at them and setting them on fire, and they're still kind of getting up. So is your impression that they're supposed to be a bit supernatural, or they're just supposed to be a bit superhuman?
I would say more superhuman. I mean, so they are like cannibals, basically.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
That was the impression I got.
And it's funny because you don't get really any backstory, just the fact that they sort of been there like for years and years. They date back quite far, but because I was watching it on stream the other night, and one of the regulars, Camilla, said they apparently give you a backstory in one of the sequels, like 4 or something like at the start. So it's a bit funny doing that 4 movies in, but apparently we've got that backstory to come.
Need to move past this whole deformity equals inbred and evil, because obviously there are many people out there with deformities that are perfectly lovely people and obviously are not inbred. So I did find that a bit dated. And I have to say, for me, cannibalism and these sorts of like bad guys, I find them really freaky and very much outside of my comfort zone. Like when I watch a slasher, I like a good masked killer, you know, with a knife, who just kills his victims and moves on. I have a real issue with anything being done with a body after it's died. I'm like, once this person's dead, like leave the body alone. And this is not just in horror films, like any kind of film where people desecrate bodies, it makes me very uncomfortable. So yeah, so when we had the scene in the cabin when they're all hiding and they're watching these guys dismember their friend and eat her, like I had to look away. I was starting to get very nauseous, and I think these films are really going to take me outside of my comfort zone as far as horror goes, because this is not like a subgenre that I gravitate towards. I guess you could kind of view it as like a small little subgenre of body horror almost, because there's so much going on with cannibalism, and I was actually very glad and very surprised that there was such a minimal amount of it in this film. I was very worried going in that I was going to be seeing lots of like cannibalism, but it really was just that one scene. As you said, the rest of the movie is more kind of a survivalist kind of movie, which I think was better. But I'm not sure what to expect as the movies go on. Like, I don't know how much they're going to lean into this cannibalism, so it could be quite difficult for me going forward, because I don't particularly like this little subgenre. What about you? How do you go with like this sort of stuff?
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's obviously depends, I guess, how it's done, but it can definitely feel a bit too coutureous in a way.
Yeah.
Like, in a way, it doesn't really. It can become a point where it just feels gross for the sake of it, rather than it's not necessarily scary. It's just a gross sort of thing. And I'm not sure really. Yeah, we'll have to see how much the sequels play on that. I don't, because as I said, I've seen number 4, and I don't remember that leaning on it too much.
Okay.
Because I think as these go along, it might just be the sort of franchise where they might just find different settings for like the characters, and it could just be, for a lot of the movie, it's like these cannibals hiding in the background somewhere, and they slowly start taking them out. So I mean, fingers crossed they won't lean too much into the Carly's death was good. The arrow, you know, to straight. Because there was some sort of gut punches like that where it made you look like they were going to survive, and then they didn't. Because she actually lasted longer than I was expecting her to.
Me too, actually. Like, I knew eventually she would die. It was very obvious that Eliza Dushku and Tom Cruise wannabe were going to be the final two. But yeah, her death, she lasted a bit longer. And like you said, she did have like a little mini arc where we got to see her character become stronger and, learn to maybe fend for herself a bit better. She was very hysterical, obviously, after her fiance died, and you could really feel her grief. But her death was quite horrifying when it finally did come about, even if you knew that it was coming. So definitely a nice bit of horror there. And I have to say, I thought they had quite creative set pieces, like the climax where they're kind of jumping around in the trees. I thought that was actually quite interesting. Yeah. I thought that was very cool. That was something very different. It created a lot of tension, because you didn't know who was hiding in the branches and where they were. And, they had the added, peril of, you're in a tree and you can fall and you can hurt yourself. So I thought that was a really fun set piece. I think they really utilized the wood setting a lot better than I've seen in other movies.
Because, I mean, just speaking about what we were a minute ago, I've seen a few of these like straight to like DVD style survival type horrors, and they do become quite extreme. Like, they do use it as an excuse to become quite extreme, and a lot of times it does feel extreme just for the sake of it rather than it's justified. So I did appreciate maybe then they didn't do that here. Then it was, typical sort of horror, and you had the suspense and the group of characters, and you had moments like that. Because even though I thought Chris was a total idiot to suggest them go into the treehouse, it did actually lead to quite a good scene. That was quite a good scene as well. You know, them trying to smoke them out, and also the dilemma of like, should we jump and take a chance with that, or should we just stay here and we're pretty
burn
much
to death?
dead?
Yeah.
So I think it does add, you know, dilemmas like that. I think that's where survival horror can be quite good, because you do have sort of the characters having to come up with solutions type thing. It's not, a lot of the horror stuff did work pretty well, and probably carried the film in some ways.
Oh, definitely. Like, if they didn't have that really effective horror, then this film could have definitely just been kind of very, very average. I do just want to quickly talk about the climax of the film, because I did have some issues with the climax, with just the way that a couple of things were written. So towards the climax of the film, Eliza Dusku and we're just going to call him Tom Cruise wannabe, because I can't remember his real name. They think they're home safe, but then the cannibals find them. Now, obviously, Eliza has to survive to the end of the film, but I found it very contrived that the cannibals had literally killed everyone else on site, but they kidnapped her and took her back to the house. And obviously that was so that he could come in and rescue her. And this is what I mean about her being turned a bit into a damsel in distress in the end. Like, I thought maybe he would end up sacrificing himself to like save her, and then she would go and rescue him, because that's usually how these kind of movies play out. But instead we got like a very typical damsel in distress. But I did find it kind of contrived that they didn't kill her on the spot, because there was literally no reason for them to not kill her except for plot armor, except for the fact that she had to, you know, that she had to survive so that the guy could come and rescue her. So I found that a little bit contrived. And then, like I said, at the end, when they're like trying to kill them, and they've got like, one of them literally has an axe buried in his chest, and he's still like doing like a Michael Myers sit-up, and I'm like, dude, are these guys like invincible? Like, what is going on? So I have to say, I did find the climax a little bit contrived and a little bit silly, but that just might be me being a bit harsh. I'm not sure. Did it play out well for you? Did you like it?
I think you're probably right on that. It wasn't the best climax. It was a bit cliched in a way, and obviously I think it's one of those, it balances a tightrope where, because you get quite a slow build to actually seeing them and to actually like the final type standoff. So up to a point they sort of keep them suspenseful and under wraps, but I think once you start having more and more interactions, maybe they lose their sort of effect a little bit. But yeah, no, it wasn't the best ending. I'll go along with that. And obviously you get a little tease that they might be alive at the end, like sort of just after the start of the credits, there's a little teaser.
Teaser, which is actually kind of cool. I've never really seen like a horror movie do that kind of little like, oh, it's a little post-credit or mid-credit scene. But again, I was like, oh my god, he's still alive. Like, what is going on here? It was like, let's stretch the willing suspension of disbelief very, very far. But I did like that little end credit scene. It was a little fun bonus.
So I think I'll go 6.5. I think it's a solid time. So that feels about right. I think to go up to a 7 might be generous. So, but I had a solid time with it. So 6.5.
Well, for the first time in a very long time, we are actually going to give the same score, because I would give it a 6.5 as well, because I think that parts of it were quite entertaining. I think the horror worked in some parts. It was very, very effective for me, and it was fun. You know, I was watching it, and I wasn't, even though I was finding bits and pieces to kind of nitpick, I had a lot of fun watching it. It was kind of like, it was entertaining. It wasn't too long. It only has a runtime of 84 minutes, so I liked that they kept it short. And, you know, like I said, early 2000s nostalgia can go a long way for me. And I kind of, part of me was enjoying the fact that it felt very 2000s and it had that nostalgia attached to it. So for the first time in a very long time, we have agreed on this and we'll both give it 6.5. Look at that. Look at that, people. We actually can agree. We just don't agree when Keith is very obviously wrong, like in the case of Scream 3 or Halloween Kills. But, you know, we're still friends despite that.
Yeah. Okay, wrong turn. First wrong turn down. 6 more wrong
Wow,
turns off
6
the road
more.
to go.
Yeah.
I do fear that we're headed for a lot of trashy, straight to DVD
Yes.
sort of territory. I've heard that the recent film, which came out last year, is good, actually, pretty good.
Cool. So something to look forward to there. That's good.
Yeah, because I think they sort of did a reboot style thing with that one, but I heard that was actually quite good. So fingers crossed for that. But yeah, always interesting to see more horror because I haven't seen many of them, and how they can stretch this premise out.
Yes.
We shall see. So yeah, that's the first one. So let us know your thoughts about Wrong Turn, the original, in the comments below. Like and subscribe. You can also share us out on social media, ding the bell on YouTube, and follow our other horror reviews, our other franchises. We recently completed the Scream franchise. For now, we also do sort of monthly top 10 videos. So on a horror note, we did a top 10 villains video, which we did for Halloween. So that's up on the channel now. And we're also planning a top 10 horror kills video for next month. So that's exciting, something fun for you to look out for. So yeah, support us and support me on Patreon, which is patreon.com/boardnow. Rachel, if you want to plug your channel.
So you can follow my channel, Rachel McDonald, which is video essays covering a wide variety of topics. My Tumblr and my Twitter are also both linked on my channel page, so just follow me everywhere. Content across all 3 platforms. So yep, come find me at Rachel McDonald.
Okay, and we'll be back with more Wrong Turn, more horror movie reviews soon. We'll see you guys later. Goodbye.